We are live today. My name is Dr. Win. Welcome back to my YouTube video channel. I want to share with you the video of Dr. Ming Wang, how he um, become a world-renowned eyes laser surgeon. So I'm gonna let you check out this video right now.
With only $50 in his pocket, hardly able to speak English, become a world-renowned laser eye surgeon. And what led this scientific-minded atheist to believe in a creator? Today, Dr. Ming Wang earned his MD at Harvard and his PhD in laser physics from MIT. He's written 100 scientific papers, 10 textbooks, and played the Chinese violin erhu alongside Dolly Parton. Quite obviously, he has a story that needs to be heard. Dr. Wang, thanks so much for joining me. This is really a treat.
Thank you having me on your show.
Well, let's jump right into your story, which is absolutely captivating. You were born in China in 1960, and the Cultural Revolution began in 1966 when you're only 6 years old. Explain to our audience what happened and how that affected you and your family.
Yes, thank you. In 1966, the government in China decided the best way to basically keep people ignorant is to basically affect the next generation's educational process, because people with knowledge and education is a threat to dictatorship. So they started the Cultural Revolution, which lasted 10 years from 1966 to 1976, during which time they shut down all universities and colleges of the entire China. And they sent away to some of the poorest part of the country, every single high school graduate, and for lifetime of send them for lifetime of poverty and hard labor. They will never be able to come back. So over 10 years of Cultural Revolution, by shutting down all universities and colleges of the entire China, they sent away to basically labor camp 20 million young people.
Oh. Okay, 20 young people. Now, maybe tell.
So here's the catch, you guys. Just want you guys to have the idea and a quick introduction about Dr. Min Wang. Dr. Min Wang is a scientist, is a physicist, is a laser physicist. His study at MIT postgraduate program was about laser physics, but he also have a privilege to have a medical school background at Harvard. So check out his video of interview, and I want you to see that faith and science can it be interchanged? Can it go together, or it's not gonna work? I want you guys to listen to this beautiful story of Dr. Min Wang.
Tell us a little about where you lived and your family. Did you have brothers and sisters at the time? Did you have what did your dad do and mom for a profession? Tell us about that, if you will.
I was born in a city south of Shanghai called Hangzhou, and into a family of medical professionals. My father is an internist, medical doctor, and my mother is a teacher in a medical school. And I have a younger brother. Actually, all of them were depicted in this film, upcoming Sight. And my father and mom, and they worked very, very hard, because we didn't have very much. Actually, it was very poor. The combined salaries of my parents every month were only $30.
Wow.
So we have to live on that. I remember, people ask me sometimes, Ming, why you work so hard? What drives you? My best answer is that I was brought up that way. I was imprinted the will to work hard, because as a 3-year-old kid, I remember we could only afford 8-watt electricity every month. 8-watt is a quarter of a light bulb. That's all the electricity we could afford as a family. We have no bathroom, no kitchen, no heater, no air conditioning, no telephone. And so what happened is dad wants to hang up the 8-watt little light bulb very high on the ceiling, so the whole room's illuminated a little bit. 4 of us live in one room. And but he couldn't study if the light is too high. Even the room is illuminated. But if the light bulb's loaded too low, he can read books, but the whole room is too dark. So he found a solution. He hung up the 8-watt light bulb up in the ceiling, so the whole room, so we all can see each other in the room. But then he put 2 chairs, one on top of each other. He climbed up there, sit on the top chair. It was summer, very hot, and he was bare-chested in his shorts and holding the medical book in his hand, and put this light 8-watt light right in front of that book, so he can both illuminate the room, the light can illuminate the room, and also enable him to study, so close enough to his book. As a 3-year-old, I remember I was playing, looking up, saw dad and studying with this contraption, and saw hundreds of little pearls of sweat on his back because it was so hot. There was no air conditioning. So that mental impression, that imprinting is what brought me to make me someone who always want to do my best, whatever I do. In fact, I'm very grateful to my parents, so I dedicate the film site to them.
That's amazing. Now, we're going to get to this film. I want my viewers to hear all about it and go see it. It comes out in May. But were you, at that time, it's amazing you had that memory from being 3 years old. Were you an outlier among your friends, or is this common experience for your peers and people of that time dealing with that level of really just poverty and working hard and struggling to get by?
It's very typical. Many many people throughout the United States who have seen this film that resonated their lives as well. First generation immigrant. It's very typical. And the thing is, who appreciate sight the most.
I want to just stop right there because I want to reiterate about uh, the life experience that Dr. Ming Wang went through. Even though I grew up in the very poor family in Vietnam, but the way he describes how his dad was studying medical book in a very tiny little A watch light, that's really make me cry. But you guys, if you don't know Dr. Min Wang, I suggest you to listen to his story, and you're gonna learn so much about the perseverance, the determination, the wisdom, the encouragement, the power of hard working that he went through, and he is one of the most talented doctor, talented individual that I ever met in my life. So check it out and continue watching this.
Those who used to be blind. Appreciate freedom the most are those who used to not have freedom. And so appreciate so much what we have in America, the freedom to worship, the freedom to seek happiness. That's why this film remind us how blessed we are to live in this country.
Talk a little bit about your family in terms of religious beliefs. Obviously, in China, the state religion is and was atheism. Was that your beliefs? Did there come a point where you're like, I'm an atheist, or was it just what you assumed about the world because your parents and everybody around you believed?
Yeah, 95% of people in China were and are still atheists today. And so out of the 5%, and I think probably a few percent, maybe 2 or 3% Christians, and the rest various different Buddhists is very big. So most of the people are atheists, and so was me, my parents, and my brother. So I brought up in an atheist family. Even though I was brought up in an atheist family, but it was a family that respecting tradition, that respects knowledge, scholarship. And so despite the fact during the Cultural Revolution we were not allowed to read anything other than government assigned books, but that always had little books of ancient poets, Chinese poets, and different books are hiding on the shelves behind the official government red book. That he read these to me, so that very early on he has instilled in me a curiosity towards the world beyond China, beyond the time we live, but also a broader view about the world, not just Eastern viewpoints, life views, but also Western and world views.
So the Cultural Revolution hit when you were from 6 to 16 years old. How did you avoid getting sent to a labor camp, and how did you get an education?
That was a good question. At age 14, 1974, I finished my junior high. Because my parents always have insisted and encouraged me to study hard. So I studied really hard. So I was a straight A student and looking forward to attending high school. And eventually I wanted to become a doctor. I always wanted to be a doctor as a kid. Daddy and mommy got this little medical stuff, the instruments, the broken instrument that university, throw away. And I always play little doctor for my childhood friends and, repair their broken skin or things like that. So I want to be a doctor. But when I finished my junior high at age 14, 1974, basically a very difficult situation emerged. If I went on to high school, I would be deported, just like 20 million others, for life, into the lifetime poverty and hard labor. And so my parents want me to avoid that. So with pain, agony, they actually had to stop me from going to further education into high school. Therefore, basically, shut down any dream of becoming a doctor. And so I stopped. My education was abruptly cut after age 14 junior high graduation. And then government still want to deport me unless I could find a job in cities. So that's why I started learning a music instrument, Chinese violin called erhu, E-R-H-U, a two-string instrument, and learning dancing. Because if you could play a music instrument and learn dance, you can get into the government song and dance troupe, and therefore being allowed to stay in cities and avoid being sent over to labor camp. Very interesting. In China, in the early to mid 1970s, there was this suddenly found interest in music and dancing by tens of thousands of youngsters, teenagers throughout China, and all for the reason to survive rather than the love for music and dance. I was one of them. And then the government discovered we were interested in music and learning dancing with an ulterior motive, really not for music dancing, but to avoid being sent away to labor camp. So they actually stopped everybody's, they wouldn't allow, and they will not recruit any students into the song and dance troupe in the cities. So my goal of avoid being sent away to labor camp got dashed. So I was going to be sent away to labor camp, and then my parents smuggled me into the medical school they were teaching. So I became an illegal medical student with studying medicine illegally, without any prospect of becoming a doctor ever. And I asked my father, I said, why should I study? He said, well, knowledge will be good. Knowledge will always be useful. And they actually bribed practically those medical school professors. So I asked them, don't look at over there. My son is sitting there. He's not a student, but he's listening. So all these professors were doing a favor to my parents by allowing me illegally sit through those medical school classes.
Okay, so then the revolution ended in 76, but you came to the States 6 years later in 82. What happened at 76? And then tell us how you ended up coming to the States.
So in 1976, the Cultural Revolution ended after 10 years, from 66 to 76. China realized what a tragic mistake it has made by having shut down all universities and colleges of entire China for that 10 years and having practically destroyed the future of a whole generation of young people. So they stopped Cultural Revolution, reopened all the colleges, and there was a chance to apply for college, take the SAT equivalent, National College Entrance Exam. But I only had junior high education. I was, basically dropped out of school 3 years prior. So the last 3 years, I've not been studying. I was playing music instrument, learning dancing, and also trying to study medicine illegally. And so my parents said, well, you need to go back to school. I said, go back to ninth. He said, no. They said, no. I said, 10th. They said, no. I said, 11th. They said, no. I said, 12th. They said, yes. I said, you mean want me to go back to school, but jump 3 years ahead overnight? They said, yes. And I said, what's the chance of getting to college, even if I somehow magically become a 12th grader? They say about 1%. Because there's so many students all last 10 years of backlog, all coming back to the cities applying for college. Because while they'll finish high school in the preceding 10 years, they were not allowed to go to apply for college because all colleges were shut.
So anyway, Dr. Wang was keeping three grade from 9 grade, 10, 11, 12, and he still were doing amazing exam, passing the exam, and get to the university. Dr. Wang just went from an unbelievable young student to a mature student. I just studied in 2 months, hard working to pass that entrance exam of university. Listen again.
Down for 10 years throughout China. So I said to my parents, you want me to jump ahead 3 years overnight and somehow magically become 12th grader? Have you never studied 10th, 11th, 12th? Somehow participate in a college entrance exam, compete with against other 12th graders for their 1% chance? They said, correct. I said, you guys are crazy. Mom said, we're not crazy. She said, how long did the government shut down colleges? I said, 10 years. She said, okay. Now they reopen all the colleges. That's wonderful. But what is to prevent them from shutting down again next year for another 10 years? So you see people who didn't have freedom, when freedom came, even briefly, they appreciate so much. So I had to do the impossible, jumping 3 years ahead and compete against other 12th graders for the college entrance exam. But my mom and dad helped me. They borrowed some old exams 10 years prior. They hand copied onto little piece of papers. We couldn't afford Xeroxing. And so they drilled me every night with little pieces of papers containing those old exam questions. So made me study like 10, 15 hours a day.
Wow.
So yeah, really hard. But I had to do it because I did not want to return to the darkness of not having a future.
And you came to get your MD. Were you already enrolled? Did you just show up and apply? Like, how did you get into Harvard?
I actually first went to University of Maryland when I first came. I could not get into medical school right away. I studied a subject that many American students want to study, which is classical physics, quantum mechanics, laser physics. And that's how I could get into school. And I had to support myself. I work at the same time when I was in graduate school. So I got a PhD degree in laser physics from Maryland and then finished postdoc at MIT. And then that was 1987. I was 26 years old. Then I thought, well, now I have the technical background. This is a free country. And since I always wanted to become a doctor ever since I was a kid, now it's the time to do it. So I applied for medical school. Actually, I was discriminated against by Professor at Johns Hopkins who think, you're Chinese, we don't know how good you are. And it's hard getting to medical school, even for American-born kid, and you're from China. You don't have any chance. But that actually inspired me to work even harder.
Yeah.
And I fought once after Cultural Revolution. That was for myself to have freedom. Now I could fight again. To get.
For those of you listening, if you have a chance to either listen to the audio version of the book called Darkness to Sight by Dr. Min Wang. Is There's going to be a lot more detail and about how he struggled and he overcome the struggle. It's amazing, amazing. You should check out the book called Darkness to Sight. I'm not advertising for you. I'm just trying to tell you that if you want to be encouraging, if you want to raise your kid with determination for successful, you need to have some good book for them to read. This is one of the very good book for them to read.
Get into medical school, but also not just for myself, but for anybody who discriminate against. So I work even harder, and I got into both Johns Hopkins and Harvard, and partly because this professor, I went to Harvard. So 1987, I enrolled in the Harvard and MIT joint MD program to get my second doctorate degree, this time an MD in medicine.
Was that professor who treated you that way because you're from China an exception in your experience, or have there been a few people that have treated you differently and discriminated you because of your race, a common experience since you've come to the States?
And I would say yes. There are actually other few people, including one professor at the PhD program when I was studying. However, my overall experience of coming to America has been extremely positive, and I'm very grateful because almost everybody else except these few folks that really welcome me with their own open arms. I mean, imagine I couldn't speak English. I did not know the culture, language. I have no social background, and I have no money. And but it is America, the country that gave me the opportunity to work hard and to realize my dream. So I think the people from around the world, like myself, many immigrants and refugees, and the people put their lives sometimes on the line so they can come here. It's because the bedrock of this country, which is freedom, guaranteed by Constitution, but also I found Christ in my life, and the other cornerstone of America is the Bible.
Okay, so let's talk about that. You describe yourself as a scientific-minded atheist. When did you start to shift, or when did those questions come? What you in China? Were you in the States? Tell us kind of those first moments, if you will, and then let's probe into the story.
I actually, I was obviously not born as a Christian. I was born as an atheist, and I came to America as an atheist, just like the Chinese student in the book and the movie God's Not There, written by our mutual friends, Dr. Rice Brooks. And just like that student, their student life is inspired by my life story in the movie God's Not There. So I came to this country. I'm not interested in anything else except science, because for all my life finally had the opportunity to study science. I was not going to be distracted by anything else. But then after the PhD program, PhD degree in laser physics, and then I got my, the second doctorate degree program, an MD at Harvard. It was in a study of medicine. In fact, in a study of the human eye, that's the seed of eventually become a believer was started. I was studying the human eye, and because I wanted to become a laser eye surgeon, since I had the laser background PhD, if I studied MD and medicine and particularly eye, I could be a very unique laser eye surgeon who knows medicine and also laser technology, which are very few in the world who have both degrees among laser eye surgeons. So I was studying this human eye, and something became clear and clear to me that it's interesting that in our human brain, all of us, in each of our head, of the brain neuron.
Hey guy, if you listen to this far, I want you to focus on the answer that the Min Wen gave it to Sean about the interesting part of human eyes and the creation of God, how he turned from the atheist to become a believer. I want you to check this out carefully.
Half are involved in vision. So that the vision is disproportionately important for human survival than almost any other senses, touching, speaking, hearing. So because so much neurons involved in the vision signal capturing, processing, interpretation, and it quickly became clear to me that with a scientific background, PhD in laser physics, and I realized that it is just impossible that the atheist worldview would hold. That means how could all these trillions of cells that combine themselves form a functional eye in a short span of 9 months, 10 months during the a child during the pregnancy for a child. So there's just so many things can go wrong that most of us should be born blind, but yet most of us are born with a sight. We can see. So I started asking a professor this question. I said, how could all this complicated eye part, neurons and photoreceptors that form in such a short period of time, which is such a near perfection, and out of random? So I kept on pestering him with these questions that basically my worldview, atheist worldview, was in crisis. I could not answer a basic important question like human eye structure. So finally he took me out for lunch and he said, Ming, what's across the street? I said, that's a car. He said, what's the difference between a car and a human eye? I said, human eye is a lot more complicated. He said, okay, can you imagine how a random piece of metal on the street assemble itself into a car? I said, no way. Then he leaned over, he said, how about human eye? And so right there, he basically just opened a window in my life, making me realize that the reason the human eye being so complicated, but yet can form nearly so perfectly nearly every time, is because it is not formed out of randomness that atheist worldview will hold, but it was formed with a specific purpose, and that purpose is vision. So there's a designer, there's a creator behind it all. And of course, going from that, realizing there's a creator, to eventually become a Christian who realized that the creator has a name in Jesus Christ. Christ died for our sin at the cross. And, that's a long process, which was described in my autobiography book, which I have a copy, called From Darkness to Sight. And it's called From Darkness to Sight because it's not just those blind orphan children that are being able to help over the decades, their remarkable journey from darkness to sight, but also how these kids, their courage, have also inspired me to come from my own darkness to light spiritually.
That's a fascinating title, especially because you're an eye surgeon, from literal darkness to physically seen, but spiritual darkness to spiritual sight. You're obviously playing on that. Let me take a couple steps back on your story. We won't be able to go into the depth, obviously, in your book, and I hope folks will pick that up. But it was Darwin who famously said the design in the eye made him shudder. And he and later thinkers like Dawkins kind of point towards these simpler eyes that exist in other organisms all the way up towards the most complex human eye. What convinces you that there couldn't be kind of a step-by-step, incremental, naturalistic explanation for the eye, and that some kind of creator is required?
Great question. The fact that Darwin himself, his theory of evolution, the Achilles tendon of his theory, the weakest point, is the human eye, that he readily admitted in his book that human eye is so complicated that this evolutionary viewpoint, it just doesn't hold in a context of human eye, particularly how the eye could form. The fact that I discovered practically the same thing as Darwin did, 200 years later in modern time when I was studying the human eye, shows that at the end of the day, as Dr. Wright's books always have been advocating with his God's Not Dead lecture tours throughout the United States and the world, and many of those lecture tours that he, fortunately, that I was involved and he invited me to talk about the scientific aspect. We play tag team. I talk about more science and he talk about more scripture, spiritual. That his premises is be open-minded and go to where the truth leads you. And I think that's the ultimate. The ultimate is we want the truth, right? And so the fact that Darwin, who was an atheist and who developed this wonderful, very impactful theory about human understanding of the world, the evolution, 200 years ago, and 200 years later, I discovered the same conundrum, the same problem, that human eye is the weakest point of this evolutionary theory. The complexity of human eye make evolutionary forming such a complicated structure impossible. It shows that there's some truth to it. Both he and I discovered the same thing, right? There's some weak point, a fundamental weak point in evolutionary theory. Now, as we may get into more discussion, I'm a common ground seeker. Sean, I love common ground. I love bring people together. I love to listen on both sides, and I love to find the element of truth that is somehow embedded in people's viewpoint. That is truth. That is the ultimate truth. Is what we are seeking. In this case, last night I was with 400 kids on the Zoom, and the question asked me, Dr. Wang, do you believe in evolution and the creation? And my answer, I said, you'll be surprised. I actually believe in both. And I believe that the creation, because I believe they address different questions. The creation has to do with how the genesis of life, the genesis of the human parts, in this case, I, and evolution has to do with the change, adaptation of that creationally created structure, how it evolves and adapting to environment. And because there's undeniable evidence of change, undeniable evidence of adaptation of all species across the globe over time. So it is true, and you cannot avoid seeing that. But yet, the fundamental problem of evolutionary theory is that it could not explain this complexity of structure and the complexity of life, how it could come with such a specific form, with all the other possibilities. It just so many possibilities is impossible that random theory, random adaptation will form a structure such as human eye, complicated as such. So I believe creation is true because it addresses genesis of life, and evolution is true because it addresses the change adaptation of life forms after it was created.
That's really helpful and raises a ton of questions that I have for you. But we're going to, in a minute, come to why you went from believing there's a creator to the Christian creator. But first, I have to ask, you are trained, obviously, remarkably, one of the top universities in China. You got your MD from Harvard. You got your PhD in laser physics. So clearly you're trained in science and that you have a religious faith. So you obviously don't buy the idea that science and faith are in conflict. Talk about what you think is the relationship between the two of them.
Great question, Sean. I appreciate the question. Last night, again, I was in front of 400 some young generation students and talk about a purpose-driven life. And the question was asked, said, Dr. Wang, isn't it, you talk about Christian faith, but isn't it true that in universities, among intellectuals, majority today are not believers? So how do you explain that? And my answer to, which is your question, my answer to this student, I said, well, it is true. In universities, the majority of the scientists today are not Christians. It's true. So one might conclude then, science and faith is mutually exclusive. They cannot be combined and don't have the common ground. If you study science, by necessity, you will hold a atheist worldview. But as I said, however, what I've learned over my lifetime, which is depicted in my autobiography book, From Document to Sight, which now turned into movie Sight now, is that the more science I've learned over decades, I went to school for 31 years. to get postdoctoral degrees, PhD in laser physics, and so I studied for a long time. So insofar as I would say I probably have achieved the most amount of knowledge and study the humankind could have. But interesting thing is, as a more science study that I study, more advanced I am in the scientific and the eye field, more, not less, evidence that I've discovered they're pointing to the existence of creator. Because the more mystery that is come through and the less explainable by random collisions by atheist belief. So I told that student last night, I said, yes, there are many scientists that are not believers, but if you look at in the history of human scientific pursuit, some of the top scientists, there are many of them were believers. So the proportion of scientists who believe in creator actually increases if you go to the highest tier of scientific advancement and expertise. So that is, I encourage a student, you study more science, study harder, because you're going to discover more advance into the greater, the top tier scientists.
So guys, so listen, this is what Dr. Wang said, and I want you to hear very clearly that as a scientist, if you're just a scientist, but you don't study higher and deeper scientists, methodology or evidence or research, you may not see the creation of God. But if you are a top tier, top 1% scientist, such as Albert Einstein, Newton, Pascal, those greatest scientists, mathematics, physicists, people, they are all believer. Dr. Min Wang is one of an example of a top 1% scientist. You're going to hear more about what he said.
Rank, you will actually find the more common ground, not less, between science and faith.
So you had this conversation with a professor at lunch, and he opened your eyes up to saying, oh my goodness, there's really design in the eye. Of course, that's consistent with Islam, Judaism, Mormonism, some understandings of Hinduism. What were the steps that started to lead you to identify that creator as found within Christianity, and Jesus being that creator in particular?
Great question. In my autobiography, From Darkness to Sight, which is now made into movie site now, I talk about how I was impacted by many other physicians, that group of physicians who are dedicated Christians, the American Medical Dental Society members. In particular, there was a professor who I respect a lot, professionally. Then actually, I was influenced by a young lady who was a dedicated Christian who was also studying to be ophthalmologist, and she brought me to this group of physicians who are Christians. So first of all, I respect these physicians because they're professional achievements, but at the same time, I listened and attended meetings and see how faith has guided in their life. And I realized that to be an ultimate physician is to recognize that our science is just a tool. You need a bigger purpose for life. And they told me about Jesus Christ, told me the resurrection, told me about God. Yes, there's a creator. By then, I believe there's a creator, but creator has a name. Because Jesus died for our sin as a human being, because he loves us. And then 3 days later, he rose from dead, proving that he can conquer death. And so I realized that as a human being, that we have an opportunity for eternity if we follow Jesus Christ. And we have an opportunity to serve, in this case, all these physicians, serving not just with medical knowledge, but also with a heart.
So from what I learned from Dr. Ming Wang is that even he have some concept about Jesus, Christianity, and his faith, but one of the people that brought him closer to Jesus was one of the doctor in the um, Christian dental medical um, organization where they help to grow maturity of other young Christian. So this is important. Those of you who are curious, want to know how whether you really belong or understanding the concept of Christianity, I encourage you to join the, if you're a dentist, join the Christian Dental Society, or if you're a medical doctor, you can join the Christian Medical Society, or we could do have a combination of both Christian dental medical, where we combine both. So just that's something that I want you to share for the listener.
To help others. It is the influence of these physician Christians, their dedication, they're using science as a necessary tool, but made me realize that science is necessary, but it's not sufficient to have a purpose-driven life. The sufficient condition has to come from faith and in Creator, but also more specifically in Jesus Christ. So resurrection proved God has a name in Jesus Christ, who died our sin. Resurrection proves that He is the ultimate inspiration for us to have not just mastered the science and skills, but also realize there's a higher purpose what we're going to use the tools for. And for different people have different purposes that God wants us. For me, is to use my long, hard-earned skills, 31 years of schooling, to help those who need the most help, which are blind, orphaned children.
So it's awesome to hear about the number of other scientists and doctors who were living out their faith and they shared this with you.
Yes.
Did you need to say, all right, I trust you guys, this story's great, but I'm going to probe into the evidence myself? I mean, you're such a scientific minded person. Were you reading the evidence for the resurrection? Were you studying the reliability of the Bible? Or did the story just ring so true to you that you knew it was true and didn't need that evidence, at least initially?
I always want evidence as a scientist. Yeah, and that's sort of been ingrained in me because my parents were scientists. And yes, I did look into the resurrection, and in terms of did it happen? And it was, to me, it was unquestionably true because it was proven by different people at different times through different means. And from scientific standpoint, if a fact that been proven by different people who are not related at different times and different ways, and that is it's a very scientific way of looking at if something's really true or not. And also the fact that one can, I think the difference between believing Creator and Creator has a name in Jesus Christ is that there's a personal relationship I can develop with the Creator who guide me, that through my life doing different things, that especially if I got stuck or in difficulty. So my second evidence that convinced me that God has a name in Jesus Christ is that, and then I start my life as a Christian, that believing Him, but yet I still continue looking for evidence beyond the resurrection. And so one particular example is I started doing research trying to figure out how could I help people with chemical injuries that result in blindness in their eyes due to scarring. And I found that the only person who does not scar are unborn child. However, how can you do research on the fetus without hurting a baby? Yet I do want to do research. I do want to do research to help these kids and blind orphan children and other people who have got blinded due to injury and trauma and resulting eye scarring. So, well, I submit to God. I say, well, God, is there an answer?
So, guys, even as scientists, this is the evidence that when you submit everything to God, when you lift every difficulty, every struggle, trial, tribulation, or your uncertainty of future, you give it to God. God will answer you. Here's the evidence of Dr. Ming Wang, what he when he submit the difficulty of his research to God, and this is what he's found.
Answer to this question, if you're there, if you're real, give me some idea. I got stuck now between the conflict between science and faith. If up to the atheist scientists, they would do the stem cell research, fetal research, no problem. But if up to Christians, we don't want to do stem cell fetal research because life is sacred, as Bible said. But I realized that second viewpoint has a problem too, because without research, our life's quality cannot be improved. Creating new medical treatment, and stem cell research, fetal research are important, are critically important, because the top 5 causes of human mortality today are cancer, stroke, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's disease, and diabetes. All of them could eventually be conquered by stem cell research. So I believe these two camps are too polarized, the atheists and scientists. And there's a truth that both sides should learn from each other. Atheists should learn about Christian faith, and Christian should learn about science. It does not make sense to me. A pastor one time there's a pastor, I went to a church visiting, and the pastor on Sunday said, I got headache, but I don't believe in medicine. Everybody just pray for me. But next day, Monday morning, 8 o'clock, he pick up phone and call the doctor. There's a lack of sincerity there. And I think we need to be truthful, authentic, that I feel science is indispensable part of our lives. Our lives is transformed by science, such as cell phone, transform the way we live. So I submit my the conundrum, the dilemma to God. And I said, show me, God, I want to do research on fetal tissue, but at the same time, to help patients restore their eyesight, but I don't want to hurt the baby. And in the book talk about, I was interacting with a doctor who is a scientist and also a Christian. And he just said, Ming, God said, James 1:4, perseverance, to keep it on. Don't give up, don't give up, don't give up. So I was studying with other scientists at the time, one notably Dr. Chen and several others, and we just keep on probing this question. I keep on praying. And it's one of those prayers that I think God somehow that instilled in my mind this idea that, well, instead of touching any part of the baby, since the unborn child can heal without scar, and after birth we heal with scar. So something dramatic happened at the time of birth, and one possibility is the fact we lose the amniotic membrane, the envelope surround us, each of us, before birth. So is it possible this amniotic membrane surround each of us before birth is what actually convey to give the unborn child, the ability to heal without scar? So you see, that's a God-inspired idea, and that's a result of the praying that not only that God does exist, but also God does care to develop a personal relationship with each of us, because in that case, it's my personal praying to Him and personal asking for guidance. So I actually started doing research on the placenta. I got lots of placentas donated to me by mothers after giving birth to children. The placentas are discarded anyway. So nobody has any problem using those amniotic membrane, but it was connected to the baby. That's the magic part of it before birth. It's like a blanket surround the baby. So I got these placenta brought to the laboratory and tease out a little thin saran wrap membrane out of the placenta that used to surround all of us before birth. And I was doing research on this amniotic membrane to see if it does reduce scar and regenerate the eye. And it does. So I eventually developed amniotic membrane contact lens. And it's interesting that when amniotic membrane contact lens was put on these injured eyes, indeed, it essentially recreate this before birth environment on top of the eye, allow the eye to regenerate once again and reduce the scar, improving eyesight. Then I decided, I'm just gonna give the technology to the world. So I put online my patent I actually went around the world to about nearly 60 nations, teach about the amnion membrane contact lenses over 20-year period or so. I taught over 10,000 eye doctors. So today, amnion membrane contact lens is a worldwide $100 billion industry now. And then doctors from nearly every nation have used the amnion membrane contact lenses, and millions of patients have had their eyesight improved and restored. To me, it shows that amnion membrane contact lenses, powerful technology, can utilize fetal tissue stem cell, but yet preserving life at the same time. Science and faith do work together.
That's such a remarkable story of God's common grace, that God has given us the commission to use science to help people. He's given us the minds to do so. He's given an environment in which we can apply it. And so in your journey to faith, praying to God for some kind of technology to help people, and the Christian God specifically, by giving you this idea, is one of the things that solidified you in your faith. So it's a combination of being convinced there's a creator, looking at the Gospels and the person of Jesus, and also examining the evidence, and then having an answered prayer. So how did this affect you? Because as I hear you talk about your story, it was difficult growing up, but it seems like you felt cared for, you had purpose, you come to America, you had a family that provided for you and loved you. You come to America, you're grateful for freedom. So becoming a Christian, how did that affect or shape you personally, professionally, relationally?
Great question. I think there are three major differences that being a Christian has made in my life. Number one is a purpose. That after I became a doctor, finishing my 31 years of schooling, and I was ready to practice medicine as an eye doctor, I pray again as a Christian. Why should I do? What is God you want me to do? That specific beyond my regular job as an eye doctor. What is you want me to do specific for you? And in those prayers, that I felt that God was giving me a direction that I should use my long sought after difficult learn process to learn medical skills, 31 years schooling, to help those who need the most help, which are blind orphaned children. So that's my book, from darkness to sight. Once again, I showed early, that has to do with the stories of these kids, blind orphan children from around the world, how they have restored how we have restored their eyesight, the miracles. Say that the glory of these stories, miracles, belong to Christ, because God was the one that instilled in my mind, to begin with, that I should use my long, hard-earned medical skill to help those who need the most help, those blind orphan children. So first difference is purpose. That a God-centric purpose, a God-inspired purpose that is beyond what we normally do. And I always tell my fellow Christians is that whatever job you have, you could be a real estate person, you could be business person, you could be computer scientist, but what does God want you to do beyond what you normally do? That's specific for Him. For me, beyond what I normally do, laser eye surgery is these charity surgeries to help these kids. Second, so that's a major different purpose. Second is eternity. That being a Christian, that gave me this fundamental comfort and a chance that if I be a good Christian, since God has died for our sin at the cross and rose from death 3 days later, proving that He can conquer death. So being a Christian, I may have a chance for eternity as well with Him. And the third difference, beyond the purpose, beyond a chance of eternity, is the journey. And that being a Christian doesn't mean that I just declare to the world, I'm Christian today, I'm just perfect, and my life is... No, it's a journey, and the life is no less challenging. And this journey is a commitment. That means God is the leader in my life, that when I have problems, when I'm stuck in something, I need to recognize I could ask Him for guidance, for help through prayer. And I just told you the example that when I stuck with science and faith, I want to help patients reduce eye scarring, restore eyesight, knowing the fetus can heal without scar, doing research on fetal tissue, but at the same time, I don't want to hurt the baby. I don't want to hurt the life. So I fortunately prayed and listened carefully what God wanted me to do, eventually that the idea came to use the placenta is a God-inspired idea. So the three major differences being a Christian: a God-centered purpose, using science, but to do what? To do what God wanted me to do, to help blind orphan children. Second, a chance for eternity, because He is the one who has conquered death, so we could have a chance as well, being a Christian. And third, is a journey. There's a lifelong commitment. The commitment that we need to always resort to Him, ask for help when we're in trouble in life.
Those are three great answers. Now, I've noticed just watching some of your videos online and, of course, your book that you wrote, that you're outspoken about your faith. You described earlier times where you were discriminated against because you're from China.
Mhm.
Have you at times been discriminated against in the academic world, in the medical world because of your faith? Has it helped you? Is it a non-issue? Talk about that a little bit, if you will.
Great question, Sean. I appreciate this question very much. Yes, I was discriminated against in the academic world. Because of my outspokenness about my faith. In fact, in one occasion that people challenged me on the podium, I was speaking about the amniotic membrane contact lens because I've been teaching for 20 years, the doctors, and as I told you, I basically donated technology to the world and trying to help doctors learn so that we can increase the speed of dissemination of knowledge, and so I could share that discovery. That as I was describing the scientific presentation, no problem, but I was describing the genesis of it, the idea, as I described to you. Some people challenged, and they were not. They didn't believe that they have anything to do with Christian faith. Okay, so in fact, this is how I answered. So I was challenged sometimes because of my outspokenness about faith in the scientific arena. This is what I told them. A story. I told them a story that people believe there's no common ground between faith and science. So, and I used to think that's true. If I become a Christian, then it's difficult for science and faith to work together. But through amniotic membrane contact lens development, which is featured in the film Sight, upcoming, that talk about it can actually work together. They can create science fetal stem cell technology without hurting the baby, right? And so I told those people, atheist scientists who challenged me, I said, well, you don't believe there's a common ground between science and faith? They said, no, we don't believe that. We said, okay, let me tell you the story. When I started practicing medicine, I have a strong desire. I want to pray with my patients because faith had played a significant role in my training becoming an eye doctor, as I told you. The discovery of complexity of eye and the guidance of these Christian and the scientists, the doctors in my life. And so I want to pray, but then people told me that just like those scientists who challenge me in scientific presentations when I talk about faith, that no, atheists will be unhappy, Dr. Wang, if you pray. Okay, they will not come back to you to see you as an eye doctor. Then I realized, well, that's true, So then again, praying that's key. I pray again. I say, well, God, I want to pray with my patient before eye surgery, because faith is such an important part of my eventually become an eye doctor. But at the same time, I don't want to lose these patients. And so I consulted my church elders and consulted the physicians and the Christians who I look up to. And they told me that if the right thing to do, there's a price to pay. And, Christ paid the ultimate price by dying for our sin at the cross. So I said, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna pray. I'm gonna go out limb and pray with all my patients. So ever since I started my career, I pray with all my patients before each of my eye surgeries for them. But as a scientist, I always want to do research, and because people say there's no common ground between science and faith. If up to the atheists, they don't want me to pray. If up to myself, I want to pray with my patient before surgery, doing their surgeries. So I collected over a 2-year period about 200 some non-Christian patients for different ways. I figured out they're not Christians, and asked each of them the day after surgery. Over a 2-year period, about 200 of them. And the question to them day after surgery is, now you're happy with your surgery yesterday, but what I want to know is, were you offended when I pray? And because I'm doing research, I'm always doing research looking for evidence. Is there evidence supporting the science and faith, or Christians and non-Christians could have common ground? Because it seems there's no common ground, right? Up to non-Christians, they would not want me to pray. If up to the Christians, myself, I want to pray. That's the questions raised by these atheist scientists in the scientific arena. When I present science and the faith, they were not happy about the faith aspect. They challenge me because they don't believe that they are scientists. They could not have anything to do with faith. So the answer came back with these over 200 so people that I surveyed the day after surgery over a 2-year period. Almost all of them said this way. I said, Dr. Wang, yesterday before my eye surgery, you did pray for me. I was not only not offended, I was moved. I said, how could you be moved that when I pray to my Christ that you do not believe? And they told me, the reason I was moved is because yesterday, underneath your laser, that I was lying there, I was nervous, my eye surgery is coming, and you did come to my ear and saying, Johnny, is it okay if I pray for us before your eye surgery? And honestly, well, the reason I asked for that, Sharon, is because I was told I'm supposed to be politically correct. I should ask for permission. So I did every single prayer before. I always ask permission. And then these folks told me the day after in the service, said, Dr. Wang, honestly, I was so nervous underneath your laser. When my surgeon come to my ear and said, can I pray with you? I did not dare to say no. I said, well, I kind of took advantage of the situation, but I took advantage for God. So I felt okay. But my question is, were you offended? And they say, no, not only I was not offended when you pray, but I was moved. And I said, how could you moved when you do not believe the Christ that I pray?
Yeah.
And they say, the reason I was moved is because in one of my most important moments in my life, which is my eye surgery, I do not want anything to go wrong. Okay, it has to do with the vision for the rest of my life. You brought something that is most important to you, your Christ. And I appreciate that. So at that moment, I realized that it's the love for fellow human being that transcends the boundary and faith and religion. It's the love for fellow human being that is our ultimate common ground.
That's a great answer. I have one last question for you, and then I want you to tell us specifically about the film that's coming out. So you're a scientist and a doctor. You see a lot of pain and suffering and brokenness in the world. How do you make sense of that? Like, why do you think God allows so much pain and suffering when he could just stop it and doesn't need surgery from somebody like yourself, so to speak?
I think God is looking for human growth in each of us in a real sense, meaning just like people in America today have taken how many of us have taken the freedom for granted because we always had freedom. And the manifestation of that taking for grantedness of our freedom is our unprecedented polarization, the unwillingness to work together across racial barriers, ethnic divisions, and political aisles. So if we had everything, God said everything just perfectly, we will not have the growth in our character. Just like one will not have the growth about appreciating freedom if you're born in a free society, never been challenged, never experienced the life without freedom. So I think God is looking for the ultimate growth in each of us, the character. And that character can only grow by our having experience of not having what we want, but also, even more importantly, by having the experience of making a decision to choose. Because if we born in the perfect world, we don't need to choose, and we have no experience of otherwise without them. So it is the inner growth that God is that they're looking for. So he allows these things to happen, these bad things happen, because he's looking for us to have the experience of the bad things so that in comparison, we know what's good things. But not only that, he gives us the choice to make a decision, each of us. By making a decision, we can grow as a person. So that's a manifestation of ultimate love, God, for us. He does not want to just pamper us with the silver spoon in our mouth. He wants us to grow by experiencing, grow by making our own decisions.
Dr. Wang, I love how Dr. Wang answered the question of Sean. I believe that as a scientist like him, he been through a lot. 31 years of education, so many up and down life challenging, but the wisdom and the knowledge that he share, it is definitely help whether you are a young doctor, dentist, uh, intellectual mindset, a person you want to grow, you want to be successful. Um, look up to Dr. Wang. Uh, pray to God so that you can have an experience, the encounter of Jesus once and for all. Once you have the experience with Jesus Christ, you're going to be talking just like Dr. Min Wang or Sean or somebody like me that when I come to the realization that um, the purpose of your life is not just doing what you've been doing, but you have the higher purpose to do at what God called you to do. You have the promise of the eternal life that if you believe in the Son of God, Christ Jesus, who died and rose again, who had the control over life and death, and he coming back to bring those that know him, have the relationship with him. Thing like that, guys, is powerful. I really believe that this interview is powerful. Um, and I want to just finish this. I did also interview Dr. Min Wang on my YouTube channel. I want you guys check it out. Meet Dr. Min Wang, MIT, Harvard, laser eye surgeon. So thank you for watching. You guys have a great day.